Hello and welcome to For Fox's Sake. This is the preview with me, Rob Hayes, and I am joined on this show by Pete Selby and James Terrell. We're looking ahead to Leicester versus Sheffield United, Saturday lunchtime, 12:30 kickoff, which we have just confirmed with Pete, who was looking at last week's kickoff times or a different team's kickoff times because he's now decided he's a Southampton fan because he enjoys watching them a lot more. We'll get into why in a few minutes' time. Before we do get stuck into the preview today, just a little word on our other episodes in case you've missed them or you're newish to the podcast. We have got The Big Show hosted by Pete Selby, who I've shunted to one side on the screen today. We don't do a preview together very often, Pete, so it's lovely to see you. But The Big Show discussing that comprehensive defeat to Southampton. So if you've not caught up on that, then do so. There'll be a new episode of the Champions special podcast dropping very, very soon, looking back a couple of months at a time at the Premier League title winning season, which was now 10 years ago, believe it or not. Last bit of admin before we get stuck in is the Christmas competition. Drawn on the 9th of December, a chance for you to win a Leicester shirt of your choice. And all you need to do to win said shirt is to be a subscriber to our YouTube channel. So if you've not already subscribed, please do so. That will automatically enter you into the draw. And we'll do the draw on the 9th of December. Nice little early Christmas present for you. Let's get into it then. I'll open with my usual question and we'll start with you, Pete. Are we feeling optimistic or pessimistic about Leicester versus Sheffield United on Saturday lunchtime?
Hello, Rob. Hello, sports fans. I think I am quite optimistic because I first of all think that we can beat Sheffield United. Now, obviously, on the back of what happened against Southampton, we all should be trudging our way through the rain and the wind to the King Power, head down, expecting a defeat. But I am optimistic in our chances in 90 minutes against Sheffield United, regardless of what happened in the week. So, yes, my glass at the moment is half full. We'll see what happens by the end of the preview.
James, half full or half empty for Saturday?
Do you know, like when you fill in those questionnaires that you might have to do, and it's like the options are, one of the options are like neither likely or unlikely. That's what I'm going for. Neither optimistic or pessimistic.
You're stuck very much in the middle.
Yeah, that's what I'm going for.
All right. Well, we'll see how the next half an hour pans out, and we'll know by your predictions at the end. And if you are watching along live, please do get involved with us by commenting. We will get through as many of your comments as possible, including prediction time towards the end of the preview. If that's how you would like to contribute today, it'd be great to hear from those of you that are watching along live. So Leicester scraped a couple of 2-1s recently, and then obviously Southampton are on the new manager bounce, and Pete is very much a big believer that they are going to climb the table fairly rapidly and do pretty well for themselves this season. So it was also a game of dodgy decisions, but I think the main takeaway for me from a Leicester point of view, and it's something that we've kind of gone round and round about on the preview and on the big show, is the frailty of Leicester's mentality. I asked a question of Jono last week on the preview about whether he believed what the Leicester players and manager were saying. They were coming out and saying, we need to prove that, or we're working hard for each other. That's what we need to show on the pitch. And I said, is that all talk, or are they actually capable of doing it? And I would argue that when a couple of things went against them, against Southampton, then it became very much all talk because they basically went missing. And if we're talking about the identity of what the basics of what Leicester fans want to see from their team, it is at least some kind of commitment, whether that be to a challenge, whether that be to a recovery run, whether that be to just improve your fortunes in some way, shape or form. And that was, for me, missing hugely against Southampton. James, are you concerned about the mentality of not even necessarily the individuals, but the collective and the lack of ability of those few individuals who might have a bit of oomph about them? to get the rest of the players rallied around them. It just seems a little bit aimless from a mentality point of view to me.
Yeah, I think we are pretty fragile as a kind of unit, like emotionally or psychologically. Both, I think what was happening earlier in the season was, I think that there was a certain arrogance to the team, which is not necessarily a bad thing. You see top managers talking all the time about how their teams have to be arrogant to be the top teams, and maybe the club as an institution were going into the season thinking we are going to be one of the top teams in the league, but so we might be 1-0 up, 30 minutes to go, but then as soon as we would concede, the team would freeze completely. Obviously, what's been happening kind of in the last, let's say, last 10 games, that's 5 to 10 games, is we're very rarely going in front. And if we go a goal down, if we concede, it's not that they just freeze. There's like almost like an emotional collapse, and you have no real sense that they have the mental strength to overcome the pressure that comes with conceding and having to come back from behind, which I don't want to see be as like a criticism of any individual, because I've never really been one for saying that players don't try or that they down tools in general. It will come from the manager, the tactics that I don't think many of the players feel comfortable in, or I think a lot of them literally don't have the ability to play these tactics. And I think that's all getting into this kind of awful swirl where they are really starting to crumble under the pressure of being mid-table, when at the start of the season much of the media was saying that they should be in the top 6. I imagine we also don't know what they were saying internally. Was Marty saying to them at the start of the season, we're going for the top 6? Was Rudkin saying that? If they were, then inevitably that pressure is going to be up, and they know that they're footballers, so they must have some understanding of football history and momentum, and they must recognize that it's only going one way at the minute. And I think that's one thing. I mean, if you were to say to me, what do I want from this weekend? It's like, can we not concede a goal? I think that would be like a good place to start and would help maybe start rebuilding the confidence of the team. But yeah, I think they are really struggling psychologically at the minute, and that is 50% of sport.
Yeah, I want to pick up on your comment there about belief, and I'll bring Pete in on this because of something we were talking about off air just a moment before we came live this evening. I started asking about sort of psychological fragility or frailty, but actually I think your belief point there, James, is a big part of it. The Leicester players don't seem to fully believe in the system. They therefore don't necessarily seem to fully believe in their individual contribution to the system. But then, you can do all the talking to get them up for the game. But then if they go out on the pitch and something goes against the plan, they either don't seem to have the plan B, plan C from the coaching staff or from themselves, and they certainly don't seem to have the belief that they're going to get themselves out of that situation. Now, Pete, you picked up, as I said just before we came on, about a shift in belief that has made you fancy Southampton as a side to watch for the remainder of the season, particularly with Fellows and Azaz, who you said look completely devoid of confidence earlier on in the season, and for something that the new manager has done has given them the belief to go out and express themselves on the pitch, and we don't see many Leicester players expressing themselves freely at the moment, do we?
Not at all. I mentioned on the big show that if you want to look at a side, any side in any division, and see a side that is devoid of confidence, the first thing you could do is look at their star player, their flair player. And if they look down, if they look sad, if they look unhappy, that's generally a reflection on how well the team feels in itself, because they're the happily bubbly character, the maverick. If they're happy, then obviously everything's fine at home. But I'm a big. There's plenty of people out there, and James mentioned the word momentum, who don't believe in the word momentum. Bruce Millington, former editor of the Racing Post, he hates the word momentum. But I am. But I'm a fan of momentum in for certain sides and certain clubs and certain areas of sports, and it's to do with sides who are technically better than other sides, who should be doing well. And when that team has confidence and momentum, you then see the record-breaking runs. And I mentioned maybe Southampton are at the start of one of those. They have a very good side. They have bought 3 players in behind a centre forward who we know can score goals at this level. And all 3 are now playing very, very, very well because they've decided to change the formation and way of playing football to suit all 3 of those players. And it's something quite remarkable that Leicester haven't done for a good number of years now. And then when momentum starts with a side, it can just steamroll through a league because, of course, they do have that quality. And obviously, you never know what could happen in terms of like Leicester in 2015-16. But you do need that confidence as well. The confidence that if you do go behind, you can then get back into the game. And you know that your side is good enough to do that. And, of course, momentum can bring confidence, etc., etc. And Leicester at the moment, they have neither. They don't have confidence. We know that. We know how fragile they are. James spoke very well there about Leicester's confidence. But I would just contradict myself for 1 second here, which I know I always do. But as much as Southampton, I think apart from Coventry, I think they're the best side in the league. I think they are. I think they're very Coventry-like. They'll always concede goals. Look at their back line. It's the same as what it was in the last couple of years as Holly changed it. They will concede, but they would just score plenty of goals. They should have scored more. So, yes, they were great. But Leicester, and there was a frightening thing for me that happened on Tuesday. A frightening thing. And it was at the start of the second half. And I believe you don't see it often. I said this on the big show. You do not see this often in football. But at the start of the second half, I think Leicester's whole system and team on the pitch, I think they collapsed as a unit. I think players were all over the place. They were stopping. And this happened for about 3 or 4 minutes at the start of the second half. And how Southampton didn't score, I don't know. And that was the worrying aspect for me. Not the non-marking from crosses or the sending off, etc. It was the fact that the team looked like as a unit, they completely collapsed and they were all over the place. And you get teams get pulled apart by sides, but this was from their own doing. And I was really worried then. And fortunately, we didn't concede because it could have been 6, 7, 8 or even more. So that's the most worrying aspect for me. And that speaks about individuals. That's got nothing to do with a team mentality or tactics or what the manager has said. That's individuals having their own self-respect for themselves and for the shirts. And unfortunately, I think there were plenty of players looking around on that field going, and to put it in the most basic of terms, well, if they can't be asked, neither can I. And all of a sudden, they weren't in the position they should have been. And that wasn't 1 or 2. That was 8 or 9 outfield players. So that worried me. You do not see that often in football. That happened.
Yeah, surprised that it wasn't a reversal of that famous 9-0 a long time ago. We'll get into the personnel in just a second then in terms of who we would like to see in the Leicester team on Saturday. Just a reminder at this stage that we do have a Christmas giveaway here at For Fox's Sake, where you can win a Leicester shirt of your choice, including the retro shirts. All you need to do is follow For Fox's Sake on YouTube, and you've entered. That is it. The draw live on the podcast December the 9th. So just subscribe to the YouTube channel. Chance for you to win an early Christmas present there. So let's get into a little bit of team news. No huge surprises. It's come out that Caleb Okoli is going to be unavailable until around Christmas time, which does limit the options defensively, with Nelson on his way back into training and maybe back in available for a game in the next couple of weeks. Aluko obviously suspended after his unfortunate full debut, shall we say, against Southampton. But Luke Thomas is back from suspension, so I mean that kind of plugs that gap. Really, I think the interesting one, and it's come up more often than I'd have thought on the preview so far this season, is the goalkeeper chat. So Stolarczyk possibly back, down to a sort of a late conversation, a late call maybe, but potentially back available. Didn't really do a huge amount wrong at the start of the season. Was obviously given the number 1 shirt, but Begovic, I think has done well. He's made a few key saves that defy his aging years, shall we say. And I think we've spent pretty much half of the preview so far talking about how Leicester are struggling from a psychological point of view at the moment. Now, Begovic has been there, done the lot, super experienced. For me, especially if Stolarczyk's not necessarily 100%, Begovic keeps his place in the team. One, because he's been a decent goalkeeper in the games that he's covered, but two, because he brings a huge amount of experience to a team that is really, as Pete said, individually was quite directionless and all at sea against Southampton in midweek. So Pete, the Begovic Stolarczyk question for you, who starts on Saturday?
No brainer. Begovic, I thought he was very good actually against Southampton. I thought in the second half you could see every time, and I know you're kind of reading faces and looking at players' body language. First of all, it was very obvious what was happening with the outfield players, but from him, he exuded confidence and calmness in goal, knowing that the defensive unit in front of him had, as I said, collapsed. And he needs to be on his game. It's live on TV. He doesn't concede 9 on TV. I thought he was very good in that second half, and probably regarding a lot of stuff that we didn't see on TV, people would have seen it in the ground itself. I think the way he managed to marshal that back line, which again let it turned into a colander. It was ridiculous. I think he did very well. A few smart saves, a wonderful save in the first half. That was a sensational save, that one-handed tip over the bar. When a goalkeeper dives, he didn't down low, but his arm wasn't exactly, it wasn't higher than vertical. It was towards horizontal. And then to tip the ball over the bar, that's a strong right hand. That was fantastic. So I think you don't take any chances, and I think that's the problem with Leicester. They might have to take chances on players. Harry Souttar coming back, the likes of Caleb Okoli in 2 or 3 weeks' time, hopefully maybe around Christmas with his knee injury. We don't want to rush these players back in, and that applies to a goalkeeper as well, because you don't want to make it worse. We might have to rush 1 or 2 players back in defence, but I think with a goalkeeper, you just don't take any chances. Begovic in goal, and as what you said about Luke Thomas, whether, yes, he probably gets the shirt, whether he fills the gap, we will see.
Well, he can't do any worse than Aluko, can he? James, let me ask you the same question, but slightly looking further forward. If I think probably as a preview podcast, we're probably edging towards Begovic starting on Saturday. But over the course of the next few games, let's say Stolarczyk is feeling no ill effects from his groin, he's training really well, he's looking really sharp. Then do you see him coming back in, or do you think it's basically Begovic's shirt to lose at this stage because of how consistent he's been since he's come in?
Yeah, well, I think Begovic has done really well. Obviously, he's come into a team that is really struggling defensively. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, Begovic is obviously a slightly more traditional goalkeeper in terms of not being the best with his feet and that type of thing. And Stolarczyk is a bit more like that. I think, I could see Cervantes bringing Stolarczyk back when he's fully fit. That wouldn't surprise me. In the grand scheme of things, I don't really think it makes much of a difference which of the two it is. Begovic is. It's a bit like the difference between. This is like a bit like the difference between, I don't know, the Lidl versions of Peter Cech and Edison or something. They're both good enough. One of them's better at certain things, one of them's better at another. I wouldn't be surprised if Cervantes will bring Stolarczyk back in, but I don't think it really matters that much.
Yeah, I think he's also got the benefit of the fact that Begovic knows his position at the club. And whilst he will be training to as high a standard as possible, he wouldn't necessarily have expected to be coming in and challenging for the number 1 shirt. So I think he'll understand his role there. So it wouldn't be sort of putting Begovic's nose out of joint if in the next couple of games. Stolarczyk did come back in. I think the back line then is going to pick itself because Thomas will come in at left back. Surely it'll be either Ricardo or Chowdhury at right back, as it has been most of the season. And we've only got 2 centre backs anyway, so those two are going to play in Vestergaard and Fass, whatever you think of them. So I look a little bit further forward, and I feel like a broken record, but it must be just because Marty Cifuentes has missed the last couple of preview episodes of For Fox's Sake. He's just been too busy to listen or watch along. But I'm going to advocate once again for the fact that Jordan James is a number 8, not a number 10. And Bobby Decordova-Reid has had enough of an impact off of the bench to suggest to me that he would be the best person at this stage to start in the number 10 position and let Jordan James do his thing from a slightly deeper place. James seems to me to be one of the only players who actually looks like he fancies it. And whether that's because he's always talked really highly of Leicester, even when he came to us at the start of this season, when we're not necessarily in the best place we've been as a club. He's always been like, Leicester have been in for me for a while. I wanted to come here, no problem. He looks like he genuinely wants to be here, which is more than can be said for a lot of the other players. So I think he should be utilised alongside Winks, even though Oliver Skipp has got a ridiculous stat pack behind him this season for games involved in and games won. It's got Winks and James with Decordova-Reid in front. It's got to be the midfield 3, James, surely.
Well, in terms of the Skipp thing, correlation is not causation. That's the first thing you learn in statistics. So yeah, I mean, I think James can play as a 10, although I do agree that he maybe works better as a kind of Frank Lampard breaking the lines type of player. I mean, we talked about this on the big show earlier in the week, is that our squad is too small, or at least Cifuentes, whether we win or lose, he plays the same team. So I agree starting Divock who I'm not necessarily convinced by, but he does have a decent touch about him, and I do think he's someone who can break a team's press. Yeah, I'd just like him to try something a bit different. He's very wedded to the 4-2-3-1, and obviously he could move into a 4-3-3 and drop James back a little bit. He could even start James from one of the wide positions, cutting in, using Luke Thomas for the width. But yeah, I think ultimately, whether he's playing as an 8 or a 10, he's obviously, like all footballers, subject to the rest of the team, but he really is at the minute, because as soon as the ball goes to Mavididi or Daka, it isn't going back to him, it's going to the opposition. So I mean, that's one of the real issues, is that he's playing in a number 10 position with players who aren't providing him with the service or a striker to pass the ball to either, which doesn't help. So I think he can play both. I wouldn't mind him trying him as an 8 alongside Winks as a 6 or a 4. But yeah, there's an element of tinking around the edges with all of these discussions at the minute, because at the minute, because he's playing the same players, just in slightly varied positions, nothing seems to change, and nothing is going to change. Like, what is the real difference between playing Mavididi or Daka? Like, they're both equally as poor as each other, but it's one of them two are going to play. I'm slightly gone off from, but yeah, let's play him as an 8. Why not? See what happens.
Pete, before we have a quick look at Sheffield United, the opponents, and have a quick dig about in players that have played for both teams, anything? I take James's point there. Nothing seems to really change. There's not a huge amount of personnel change. There's definitely not a change in shape or style. Is there one change, Pete, that you think you can make, however drastic, personnel wise or shape wise, that you think would give a bit more impetus to Leicester?
I'm just a big believer when you're struggling, you put your best players in the best places. And James is naturally alongside Winks. That's his best football he's played for the club, and it's his best game for Winks as well. Also, Louis Page is back. You've got Decordova Reid in the 10 position as well. And just to echo what James says, a lot of the time the ball gets played out wide pretty quickly, and it's bypassing the number 10 anyway. He arrives late in the box. He's got an engine. Why not put him back in that position? I think that the most sensible thing, and it's something that we've said for a long time, it's not because of the success that we had in this system, but you look at what Claudio Ranieri did halfway through the season. He went narrow. He brought in defensive fullbacks, and I mentioned on the big show why Aluko at fullback was pushing up as high as he was against Fellows, who for the last 3 games has just basically ran at the fullback, done a step over on the outside, and he must have looked how high he was and went, well, here we go. And both fouls were caused by Aluko being too far in front, trying to get back, tripping, and then pulling, red card. Stick the 2 fullbacks in and tell them not to go over the halfway line, Fuchs and Simpson style. Make it narrow, make it tight. Make teams cross the ball into the area where we do have Yannick Vestergaard. Keep the midfield tight. You've got 2 wingers who can then stay forward or get into a position where they can launch counterattacks, okay, with 2 defensive fullbacks behind them. The 2 in midfield are fine, and then you have 2 forwards. Whether you go with the 2 centre forwards or not, or whether you have a Decordova Reid and then Daka up front, but of course Daka can then stretch. Play a little bit like Southampton did. How about sitting back and instead of having the ball, giving the opposition the ball and then launching counterattacks? The one thing we do have is quick wingers and a quick centre forward. And we have the ability in midfield to pass the ball forward. We have that chance. We have that ability. It's just at the moment, we're having a lot of possession and not doing anything with it at all. We don't have that confidence in the team. We don't have the players really to be able to knock the ball around. And it's a league where teams know if they get into us, they're going to get possession. Well, they're going to get chances in the end, and they're going to stifle a very much stifled Leicester side. So that's what I would like to happen. I just think on Saturday the easy thing would be drop James back, put Decordova Reid in the 10 position. I think that's just bang obvious. I have no idea why it will not be done, because it will not be done.
Well, we'll see. Quick look at Sheffield United as we enter the last few minutes of the preview. If you like your stats that are completely irrelevant to this season, then they've lost their last 7 games against Leicester and haven't won a game in their last 10, because we all know that counts for an awful lot. But they have won back-to-back 3-0 victories, dragged themselves out of the relegation zone after a difficult start, and they have brought back Chris Wilder for his 3rd spell, even though he was only sacked in the summer. The guy loves the club so much that he answered the call yet again. Chris Wilder is, for me, a proper old-fashioned football manager who insists on the basics of hard graft. Think like Sean Dyche at Forest, the difference that he's made instantly. He's made them all run a lot harder in training. He's made them all work a lot harder in the games, and they are getting results from that. And I think that I personally am quite envious of those clubs that are almost going back a step in terms of how fashionable these managers might be, but they are extremely effective. And Leicester has always been a team that's based on that. So I think my concern in terms of if we're looking at the opposition is, first and foremost, Sheffield United are going to work hard at come 12:30 on Saturday lunchtime. And are Leicester's players prepared in terms of winning their individual battles or winning their collective battles? Are they prepared to go head to head against a team that's going to work its socks off or absolutely hear about it from the manager? In my opinion, no. I don't know what you two think, but I think the battle is going to be very much lost. And if we come out with anything, it's going to be by luck.
I think it's a case of look what you would have won as well, because they're going to play with Tom Cannon and a free signing in Patrick Bamford up front as well. Bamford, by the way, obviously, when a team signs a player, automatically, why can't we have had him? What was the problem there? Now, we know he's a little bit injury prone, but a guy who played in 7 consecutive matches for Leeds at the end of their winning campaign last season, and then he scores on his full debut then for Sheffield United. Tom Cannon alongside him. They've got a good side, good spine on the side. Tanganga and me at the back. O'Hare was a very good player. in the Championship. So he's in behind. And what do? After a dreadful start under Ruben says, absolutely mind-blowingly dreadful. He's come in and he's not quite employed his old tactics, but they've gone very, very narrow, and they've got a real spine at the side, and they're not being overcomplicated. It is Chris Wilder after all, but they are playing to their strengths. They put O'Hare in the best position. They've got 2 centre forwards. They've also got Tyrese Campbell as well. So they'll chop and change with those 3. And they play 2 up front for the majority, especially when they're at home. They've won 2 on the bounce, both 3-0. I know they were helped by Portsmouth being down to 10 men. But they are a solid unit, and Leicester need to be beware. They need to be aware of who they have. But also, when they do play with 2 up front, and I hope they do, because it might force Leicester into actually just dropping off slightly and saying, hang on, we're going to have to look after these centre forwards. And it might mean that a more counter-attacking Leicester might be put into place, because there's not many sides will play with 2 up front at the King Power. Not many sides will turn up with a Tom Cannon and a Patrick Bamford up front as well. So it might force Leicester into doing something which I think they should be doing anyway. So fingers crossed. But yeah, be wary, but I'm confident.
Tony Smith has commented, watching along live, saying, interesting to hear from Wilder today that he was interviewed for the Leicester job. Think he would have been a better choice. Not time to get into that right now, Tony, but on balance, in hindsight, I would potentially agree with that in quite a strong way. Quickly before we get into our predictions, and if you are watching along live, do send your predictions in now. We'll stick them up in a minute or two. When we like to look at players that have played for both sides, and when I was thinking about this before I did the research, first couple of the names that came into my head were the most recent 2, which is Tom Cannon and Hamza Chowdhury. But then if you go back, you'll see a lot more variety, shall we say. Pete, 2 players off the top of your head that have played for both teams. The first 2 that come into your head.
I had a few written down, actually. And the first one was Harry Maguire. And obviously he played and was excellent, and purely because I was talking about him yesterday at work, and it was Adi Akinbaye, because we went through his clubs that he went to after Leicester. So just a couple of players there. There's plenty back. For me, the one thing for me, because I am of a certain era, the one thing with Sheffield United, it reeks of Ensley Insurance Division 2 of the early 90s. Leicester, Sheffield United. Love it.
James, anybody come to mind for you?
The only one that I can think of is Brian Dean.
Yeah. Good shout. Very good shout. Tony's got a very old one, the Birch. For both sides.
Yeah.
Big old list of other random footballers like Richard Searman, Kyle Norton, Joe Mattock, Lee Hendry.
Mike Whitlow play as well. Mike Whitlow.
I haven't got an extensive list. He's not on this one, but there's every chance. Absolutely. Right, prediction time. Let's get into it. We'll go for one from somebody who's watching along first. Jakey's saying, like you, Pete, that Cannon and Bamford are probably both going to get on the score sheet. He's going for a 2-2. He's backing Fatawu and Daka to rescue as a point. He's backing Daka to score twice in a calendar year, believe it or not.
So the last few weeks.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I can predict Leicester to win based on what we've said over the last 33 minutes of this preview. I'm going to go for somehow Leicester scraping a 1-1 draw, and it might as well be Daka off of an ankle or something. I'm really not bothered, but as long as we show a bit of fight and we don't lose, I don't think we can ask much more of this Leicester team at the minute. James, prediction, any goal scorers, anything exciting going to happen?
I think I'm going to go conservative and say 7-3 to Leicester. Was it Tony who messaged in?
Yeah.
I was going to say 2-2. I don't think I would have said Daka to score, but
sorry.
Yeah,
Tony said 1-1. It was Jakey who said 2-2.
Jakey.
But we're still going.
Yeah,
along the same
so
lines.
I could see a 2-2, like a kind of topsy-turvy game. And I'm going to be hopeful, and I'm going to say that Julian Carranza is going to come on when we're 2-1 down and get us the point.
There we go. Michael is saying 2-1 Sheffield United. We have to get a little bit of pessimism in here. Pete, you've had half an hour to decide. You were glass half full at the start. You're shaking your head now. Here we go.
I've got 3 predictions for you. I reckon first of all, I'm going to go 2-1 Leicester.
Draw.
I'm going to go for 2. Yeah, I'm going to go for 2-1 Leicester. I just feel that hopefully with a kick up the backside, we can try and keep it tight. I think Bamford's going to score, but I'm going to go for a 2-1 win. Okay. My next prediction is if it goes the other way, I've just got a feeling because it's Sheffield United, slightly local side, etc., and again a familiar side. I just get the impression that if Sheffield United are leading and maybe even by a couple of goals, that the crowd will now turn on the manager. They will turn vocally on the manager. And I'm going to go as far as saying if we do lose on Saturday to Sheffield United, he's got the derby game to save his job. Personally, I think he's that close. And my final prediction is that everybody who's watching right now or everybody who's listening either now or to a recording of this, they're all going to go onto our YouTube channel and click on follow because they want to win a Leicester shirt or they want to win a Leicester retro shirt. And remember, if you're trying to get a shirt for Christmas for the kids and you want the full kit, you can have that as well. And I reckon they're going to tell all their family members and friends to go on for Fox 8 Podcast on YouTube, click on follow, and they'll be entered into that live draw on the 9th.
James, thank you very much. Mystic Pete, thank you for your wonderful predictions. Thank you to everybody who's watched along live and everybody who's watched back or listen back to the podcast. That has been the preview. We're not expecting a huge amount from Saturday's game against Sheffield United, but if we grab a point and the manager gets a few more games, it might happen. Thank you very much for watching, listening. We'll catch you again soon.